Hello, and welcome back for the next installment in the video series about building a Theorbo, formerly referred to as Theorbo Live, back when we were doing this in a streaming format. No longer live, although I'm hoping to do a live question and answer session soon for people. I've got a few questions from messages, and I'm looking forward to answering those and maybe interacting a little bit directly on a live format with people. So stay tuned for that, and if you have any questions, please do leave a comment or send me a message so that I can answer those. Today we're going to be doing the first rib bending and fitting to the mold, and in order to do that, the very first thing will be a bit of preparation of the mold itself for final assembly of the bowl. So here's the mold in its entirety with the newly made neck block removed. If you didn't follow along for the Facebook Live video series when I made this mold and carved that neck block, then you don't already know that this is the first time I have built this particular instrument. And so arriving at the shape of this neck block began as an educated guess, and then there was a process of sort of trial and error that refined it down into the correct shape. And so I have now produced templates, including this one for the profile at the base of the neck block, and then this one for the profile. You can tell what I've been eating in quarantine, for the profile of that center section. And so those will allow me to make a neck block much more quickly next time, because I won't have to start very large and sort of slowly find the shape of it inside there. I can go right to within a few millimeters of this and then just refine it and make sure that it's all fair. So that was an important step that you didn't get to see. Now, I've got this beautiful mold all ready to use, except I need it to be non-stick, because it is tragic if you get this bowl all put together and then discover that it cannot be separated from the mold. So we've already got a couple coats of nice white house paint on here. Now I'm going to give it a couple coats of shellac, and then we'll wax it. This is blonde de-waxed shellac in a 1 pound cut. So I will just give a very quick coat to the working surfaces of the mold. Working with shellac is just, it's always a very quick, light stroke. Dries to the touch, more or less in seconds if you're applying a proper thickness coat. All right, this is already dry to the touch, but I'll give it about 10 or 15 minutes to dry down a little bit more before I put my wax on. Putting on a heavy coat of paste wax. No sense being skimpy. We're not putting it on for looks or for a really even finish. Putting it on to prevent sticking. There's no sense being mean about the glue or about the wax. Just get plenty on there. In fact, you can do this with a toothbrush instead of a regular applicator pad. That's how much we're putting on. So, now we wipe the excess wax off the mold. You should give it a minimum of, I mean, the can is going to say, you know, you can do this within an hour. That's baloney. I don't care what paste wax you're using, give it at least overnight. I like to give it 24 hours because that makes it really get nice and hard, which means I can take off the excess without just wiping it all off, and it's a little less smeary in terms of getting it places I don't want to get it, and I'm just a little more assured that I'm going to leave behind a film that does what I want it to do. So, you know, I give it at least a day and then come back and wipe that wax off. You don't want any big excess gobs of wax because that wax, you know, is intended to keep the loop from sticking to this mold as it's built. But if you have great big gobs of excess wax, those can wind up, it can transfer onto the edges that you're going to be gluing. And you obviously don't want your glue preventing wax to be inside those joints on those glue lines, because that will lead to failures. And I found with the wax, that means there can be kind of a fine line between enough wax that things don't stick to the mold in a problematic way and too much wax where things won't, where every time you're fitting it, you're running the risk of driving a little bit of wax up into the seam at that point. The good news is hide glue is somewhat less prone to failure from the wax than like a PVA glue would be. A PVA glue will tolerate just absolutely no wax or silicone or oil in a joint, or even resins from the wood. PVA glue you want to use as quickly after the surface has been prepared as possible. Within 24 hours after planing a joint or cutting a joint, PVA glue will no longer reach its full bond strength just because of the resins in the wood that rise to the surface. The hide glue is somewhat less dependent on this, but still, you can get enough wax in there that it will cause a problem. And you don't want to do that. We want nice tight seams. So I think, another possible solution that I haven't tried, but I really should, would be to shellac the mold, because a sufficient layer of shellac the glue will not stick to, or maybe even better, polyurethane, or if you are set up to actually spray the mold with a synthetic melamine lacquer of some sort that is going to be just absolutely repellent to that hide glue. In which case you could use, the really, really slick thing would be to use a white pigmented lacquer that you could spray onto this, and you'd get a really thin film that was really smooth, that no glue would stick to, but you also wouldn't have to worry about it transferring to those ribs or ever wearing off. It would just be sort of permanently sealed against glue. So someday I want to try that on a mold. That's the dream, but I, in my little hand shop here, am not set up to spray solvent-based material like that in a way that would be safe or healthy for me or anyone around me. So wax it is. And with the wax sort of knocked back, and now it no longer feels tacky, it just feels smooth, which is where you want to be. We can put the neck block back on. Pick out the correct screws for that. And go ahead and just start them in the mold. By hand, get them started in their pilot holes. I know they're where they're supposed to be. And then I'll set her up and tighten those down. It's unfortunate that the entire making of this neck block happened on Facebook Live, and so I can't, I should see if there's a way that I can bring some of those videos over to YouTube, because there's some, I think, really interesting process that happens there that I would love to have people be able to see. But unfortunately, that is all trapped over there, and that wound up just being a very dissatisfying platform to use. It didn't work out well. I think we'll try doing a live question and answer here on YouTube at some point. I think that'd be a lot of fun and kind of a nice way to interact with anyone who's watching. So look for that to be, I think I can even schedule that so that YouTube would give you a notification about it if you're subscribed. So keep an eye out for that, because I think eventually I would like to do that. And because it's that time of year where we're going from very dry to very warm and damp, my neck block isn't fitting quite as perfectly as it did when it first came off here. So I'm just trying to get it really close as I can. then ease up on it from each side here. I'm putting on a tire. I'm going to pull it one way or the other by going all the way down, I guess. There you go. Yeah. All right. And then I've got a block that I use. This is basically an adapter that attaches my mold onto a sort of homemade carver's vise, a universal vise that allows me to manipulate it and move it around as I'm working. So our mold's ready to go. So now I will set up the bending iron and that universal vise, and we'll bend our first rib. So here you can see my little homemade universal vise. It's got a hole here where the spindle off of the mold mount goes in, and a little homemade crank that locks that down, and then a lock nut for holding that in place so that everything stays really nice and tight. And it's just made of pieces of MDF that have been sort of eased, and then some wing nuts that allow me to loosen and tighten it. It's not the sturdiest thing ever made. I think this has probably only got about this one more instrument in it. I even had to do some heavy rehabbing on it before this video to make sure it was going to work for this. I think version 2.0 I'll make out of a multi-core birch plywood rather than this MDF, so it's got a little more internal resistance to the tension and compression forces that get put on it. Because this, even with all these bolts running through to strengthen it, still splits out around that spindle when pressure is put on it to hold it in place. But it does the job, and it didn't cost $400, so that was a win. And this is my bending iron. This particular iron is by Caramello. I believe this is their violin viola size. I should say, it's a one-man operation. It's a great bending iron. I have some thoughts about the process of getting it. If you're interested, I can certainly give you information about the process of acquiring a Caramello bending iron. But the iron itself is really great. Solid body, quality thermostat, high power coil inside it. Really worth the money. I don't know if he's even making them anymore, actually. I have no idea if he is or not, but I've got this set right now to about 180 degrees centigrade, which is where we'll start at, and adjust it up as necessary to get our wood to become really, really plastic, which typically takes 20 to 30 minutes for it to heat up. So I've got the mold all set up, And the iron is hot, really hot. And you know that this iron is about ready when water just immediately dances off it. It just goes and is gone. Or if you're not in polite company, you can spit on it and it'll bounce right off. It's so hot that moisture won't land on it. That's about when it's right. It'll need to be a little hotter for some woods, a little cooler for other woods to prevent scorching. Right now I've got it at 180 C, which I think is going to do pretty well on this walnut, but we may need to adjust it a little up or a little down to get it good and plastic, but not burn it. Also, I apologize in advance if this camera angle turns out to be terrible. I found myself needing to choose between being able to show you how I'm checking it on the mold and being able to show you how it's bending. And I decided how it's bending is infinitely more interesting to the average viewer. So this will show you kind of my whole process, but you'll really only have a decent angle on this, I hope. I really wish I had multiple cameras for this shot so that I could be sharing the whole process with you from different views. But this studio's budget is a Samsung Galaxy S7 duct taped to a stick clamped to a ladder. So please, if you have any extra video equipment sitting around, let me know. All right, so I take our rib blank we cut out, and I've got that mark on it here for the widest point of the instrument, and that aligns with the front edge of segment number, I believe this is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's number 6. And you can just kind of check that by then rocking it back and seeing, yep, it's long enough there. Yep, it's long enough there, and it's plenty wide all around that. So then we go and we look for the point of deepest bend, you know, where the bend is the sharpest on this. And that's right about here. Okay, because that's going to bend quite sharply and then become almost flat. And so we kind of look at that and we go, okay, so if this is on there straight, that's where that is, and it needs to be about, kind of get a sense for the tension of that. And then we take it with that spot well in our mind, and we bring it to the iron, and we, oh, see, there's our first challenge. The iron and that mold is so big that we're actually going to conflict with each other. So I'm just going to kind of budge this over. Find my spot. It is very hot working over this iron, so I apologize if you see me get really sweaty today. I would open up all the windows because it's cooler outside, but my neighbor is currently mowing the lawn, and I think it would make just altogether too much noise. All right, so we just place that on the iron, rock it back and forth a little so that I'm heating more than just the point of the bend. Kind of maintaining some pressure on it, and eventually, I mean, at first it'll begin to bend. It will bend, but then there's this point, this magic point you hit, where suddenly the material is just plastic. It's just totally malleable. It's always easiest to bend the first time, and then after that, all that moisture has been driven out of the cells of the wood, and some of that flexibility is lost. So when we take that and we come see how do we do on our sharpest point of the bend. So I come and I take a look, and I go, well, you know, we're getting there. It's pretty good right in here. I need more right through there. And that's that next spot. People who are really good at this, you know, they'll do, especially by the time you get to the end of any one instrument and you really start to get a feel for it. I've seen, you know, they'll bend the whole thing in just one big go, and they just know, like, okay, this is what this instrument feels like when I bend it. And that's, you know, it's really impressive to see them do that, where they just come to the iron and bend the whole thing in one go. Just kind of hold it for a moment, blow on it a little, and that when it cools, that shape gets set. It fixes the shape. So I pay attention here to how I have to hold it to make it sit, and then I emulate. I put that same tension, that same pressure on it at the iron, because I know that was the pressure, that was the movement it would take to make it sit right. I'll just hold that for a moment. And then check it. That's sitting really nice right there now. It's making firm contact there and a little not quite right there. But that end now we'll bring here and we'll start working that out. There's just a little spot there that needs to come in, so I'll just put the tiniest bit of bend from the outside of the curve to help smooth that out. And eventually, if I just hold it, suddenly it becomes soft, suddenly it moves. And that's the moment I'm kind of waiting for, looking for, to take advantage of, is that moment when it just becomes totally plastic, because that's my opportunity to make it just exactly the shape I want. And of course, the goal is always to make as smooth a bend as you possibly can. You want to have it be a smooth line connecting all your points. You don't want a series of tight bends with shallow bends between them, or you don't want undulation. You want just that perfect, even bend. And sometimes that involves coming back and unbending a little bit here or there. So from right there, I continue my curve, and I just use my finger to kind of mark, okay, here's where, here's the point at which it departs the mold, at which I need to bring my curve out more. Hold it. And I find generally this back spot, this back end of the mold, is by far the most fiddly bit, where you have to really, it's back and forth and back and forth, and as you work to get it to fit just so. And as it begins to give at any one point, you just, allow a little more to come down and touch that mold. Do just a little bit over here where the form on the iron is a bit flatter. Lets me do that a little bit better. I just hold it. At most 30 seconds. I find walnut actually smells better on the iron like this than it does when you're cutting it. It's less acrid, a little bit sweeter. Some woods, like rosewood, smell just absolutely wonderful when you're bending them. You wish you could be bending rosewood all day. It's got this wonderful cinnamon and vanilla aroma. And so what I'm doing then is I bring this back, I make sure I'm lined up there, I push it down, I make sure that I'm, these places that I already know I'm good, I want it seated there. And then I'm just looking for where is there a gap with the mold. And anywhere there's a gap, it needs more bend. Where it departs the mold, that means it needs to be more bent in that location. Putting just enough pressure on it. You don't want to break it. You don't need to force it. When the wood reaches the correct temperature and that lignin softens, it's so soft. It's like hot plastic. It just, it takes very little force to bend. You're just putting enough pressure on it that you can feel the springiness of the wood, so that you can feel when that springiness disappears. Because when that springiness disappears, that means you're there. That means you've arrived. Unbend this tip just a little. Turn the iron up just a little bit. But generally speaking, this walnut is a really nice wood to be working with. Walnut bends well. Hey everyone, so unfortunately, I did a whole bunch of work on that rib, and thinking I had a bunch of hours of material that I could edit down into sort of a high-speed time lapse of bending the rib with occasional slowdown for commentary and tips and tricks, I discovered that about 17 minutes into filming it, my phone had died, and not in a battery way, but more like a bit the big one and went to the electronics recycling center in the sky kind of way. So I found an old tablet here that I can get some not great video, but at least it's something, so I can finish this up. And I'll just have to, on the next rib I bend, show you more of that process, how that's finished out. But I'll show you here. So I got this rib totally bent to the mold. It fits down nice and tight. So you can see there's, say, some space along that spine where I carved it down. But at every cross section of the mold, it's sitting tight to the outside corner of it. Nice fit all the way around. So that's what you want. And then plane one edge so that there's, and you can see on the right side here, I've done that. So there's one edge that now aligns all the way along with the marks. And I've taped some tabs in place to register it against before, sorry, I'm moving all over, before I put some tape on the nose block, and then also this G-clamp at the tail, so that what I can do, and this is where all my dark marks and my high points that I was so obsessed on during the live stream and stuff come into play, because here you can see now, if I come down, those marks all line up into the correct shape of a rib, including underneath. And there's maybe not enough light getting under there for this camera to pick up, but you can kind of see those. So what I can do, I'm sure you can see them on this side since it's over. Let's see. So what I can do now is use my pencil to mark the location of those on this side, and then I know exactly what I'm planing to in order to get the shape of the other side of the rib. So unfortunately, we lost all the footage of the rest of me bending this rib and of me planing it to this shape, which is really too bad. Hopefully, I'll have another camera set up figured out soon so that I can bring you along with this process.
We've already clearly now lost a step, but since a bunch of it was Facebook Live and a bunch of it was missed during that, I guess losing a step or two on YouTube isn't the end of the world. And like I mentioned before, I'm going to try to do a live streamed question and answer session. So hopefully anything that you know was missed in today's edit in the video of this rib going on, I can clear up any questions then and give some good pointers, and we'll just show a little bit more of the next ribs that go on after I get a new camera figured out. So anyway, the last 24 hours have been a delight of figuring out how to function when no one can reach me by phone and I don't have a camera or video for personal or business or pleasure. So, but I wanted to get this out. It's been a long time coming that this video would come out. And so even if it's not as good as I would have liked it to be, we're going to put this out with this video to finish up, and then we'll go forward from there. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. Please go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that if you have questions when I schedule that live session, question and answer, you'll get a notification and you can join us. Otherwise, stay safe and take care.